Welcome today to CGA. I came here from Belgium, actually, because I moved there this year. Um, and I'm here today to talk to you about interactive media and how to design them so that you have the best experience you can give to your target audience. I'm an indie game developer working with several indie studios. Worked previously on mobile, bit of in VR, on PC, and for a few years on different consoles. Currently, I'm working with Die Good Fabrik, who are Danish developers, on their upcoming game. I am a technical game designer, which means that I have to take care both of the design parts and the implementation, which puts me at a crossroad, but also means that I'll be efficient in smaller teams. That has been my experience for most of my career, and that has implications on how I work because I cannot rely on several other people to do large complicated processes. I have to be very time efficient. So let's talk about design. What is good design? Good design could be summarized as something which is accessible, that you can understand easily, and it's hard to make a mistake. And the worse the mistake, the harder it should be to make it, and it's easy to recover from. The good example would be that a stove uh, uh, cuts off the gas immediately when you are not have not put it on properly, which means you avoid any risk of fire hazards. It's pretty important, but that's part of the thing. Is design is not just about interactive media. It's about all the technology that we use, and technology in a broad sense, meaning everything that is made by humans. Um, so yeah, quite a lot of things. The very seats you're using right now, the technology we're using for this presentation, and your creation. But obviously, you notice design when it fails, really, when you have struggle with something specific, or that's the kind of place where you will really pay attention to the fact that all of this was thought by people to hopefully make your life easier. So this whole process of focusing on users is called user experience. Uh, it was coined by Don Norman in the 90s, which is a pioneer in design in general. Um, it's really about thinking who are your target users, what do they need, and what do they want to accomplish. Like, but also that sometimes you have to mitigate different kinds of users. If you look at video games, you have people who are very casual, who might want to play the same game as someone who plays very regularly. And that's something as creators that you have to keep in mind, because you should aim to make an experience that's enjoyable for both of these, but also you have to then you cannot please everyone. You'll have to make choices on who you're going to prioritize, but that's also a business one. So design crash course on some tools that are important to consider when designing interactive media. The first is science. We really don't think about it that much in the real life, but it's really telling to the users what they can expect. It's a fire crossing that used to be silent, now has audio, um, and it's all these kind of things. And it also, in interactive media, it's very flexible. Like, you have the options to show only the information that's needed at the current moment. So as something as simple as when you're on a website and you're going down the menus, like that is showing this information you're looking at was not shown before until you started down the menus. It's sounds it sounds like something evident, but it's actually something to think about when you're designing. And in video games, for example, the importance, but not just in video games, in the importance of the sign is related to the what you can do. If you're using a website and so all of a sudden it gets offline, you'll get an immediate sign saying that when you're trying to refresh the web page. That's the kind of thing, like telling you, the user, this is not working. Or in a video game, you lost, you have game over. It's telling you, like, you're like, okay, that's finished, and that's focusing on how to tell these kind of things. But it works in tandem with feedbacks. Every time you do something, you have to know how it's going to be. When you're using a water bottle, you have immediate feedback from your hands, from your eyes, and we don't think about that. But in virtual worlds, everything must be designed and implemented. And there's several ways really you can do that, like something as simple as when you're using your phone, that it vibrates when you tap on the keyboard. That is a type of feedback giving you, even if you're not looking at exactly what you're typing, that tells you, yes, the phone is telling you, yes, I have pressed this button. And in interactive media, you can also give it also gives insights into how your work is behaving. When you're making video games, you're telling the players, well, the action you just did is a very good one, or it's a very poor one, and that helps them understand through experimentation, the same way as children learn, really, like trial and error, seeing what works, what doesn't, and are the feedbacks that allow for this learning. But they also work together. Like, it's really a continuous process. You have to think about, like, what's the most important information I need to show at this moment. You can show other informations, but if they're not if they don't have priority, then they should be less visible, have less focus. And when you're making something that cannot be undone, for example, as something as simple as a website, when you have data that you might have spent time on as a user, you can sign that the delete button is red, and to be showing that it's an important action you should be wary of. Although you should be also thinking of colors globally, because, for example, red in China means good luck. In this kind of instance, you could just get a prompt saying yes, no. So when you're doing something irreversible, but if you want to be really sure about something, then you should add steps to make sure the action was intended and is not accidental, like you press at the wrong place on your phone or anything. Like that's the kind of thing you have to design. At as I said before, like you with that you are teaching really your users how what you're making is working, and there are several ways to do that. One is very obvious, which is writing it. Um, as like just a telephone from a hotel saying, "Oh, you need to type this to call reception." It sounds easy, but like by writing it down, you also uh, telling people they don't have to remember that's the number for the reception. It is every time you can put something in the world, it also means something that users won't have to keep in mind. There are cases where it is not possible when you go to very complex systems, like in this example for the game The Witness, which the whole point is about understanding how the whole puzzles work. You cannot rely then sometimes on world knowledge to accomplish that. And it ties into cognitive load at every point during the experience you're trying to create. You're asking, and you should be asking with it. You should be really thinking about exactly how much you're asking users to keep in mind. Um, it will depend on the kind of experience you're trying to make. Obviously, if you're trying to make something like very casual, like a lot of smartphone games, you will not ask to keep in mind a lot of things unless you go for puzzles, which are like very intense, and you you can see in this magnificent short video I recommend you to watch later from TEDx, The Art of Misdirection. The brain is bad at remembering a lot of stuff. So in the video, the presenter is a professional pickpocket, and as he's talking, he's just uh, asking the volunteer to pay attention to something in his pocket, and at the same time, immediately as he says that, he snatches his watch and puts it up for the public to notice, but not the target. Like that's the kind of thing. Like the brain is very limited in that sense. We don't always think about it, but when you're trying to design an experience, you can make it, if you don't think about it, you can make it overwhelming or not engaging enough. So let's go through the design process. When you want to design seamless experiences, you have to make use of signs and feedbacks to make sure everything you're offering, every option is clear, and put them, prioritize them according to their their importance at a certain point of time. And there is no formula for this. It's a craft, really. You have to test. You have to think about, okay, like what is important at the same time, at this time or at that time. You have to find out for yourself. But you should keep in mind that not everyone has the same abilities. And for people with disabilities in particular, what you're trying to make, if you don't consciously include them in your design, will exclude them. There's a lot of different types of disabilities, and it's like if you for making video games, something that you can see quite often is people will put a font size that's too small, and we or try to mash a button, or have a feedback that's only in sound. can see that also a lot on a website where you have a oh, this didn't work audio feedback, but if you don't have any visual, if you hearing impaired, if you're deaf, you don't have that information that's conveyed. That's so try to multiply the channels you're going to use for feedback as well, because not just for disability, but because it also makes a clearer message. And you have really it's like you shouldn't look at it as, oh, we're only looking for people with disabilities, because the truth is when you include them in your design, you also making a lot of people which were on the border of being unable to experience what you're creating. They were on the border of not being able to enjoy it. You make their life also easier. For example, when you lower the sidewalk, sure, people with wheelchairs will have an easier time, but also people with babies, people who use luggage, heavy luggage, like that. You will reach more people by including by consciously including in your design. And the trick is you have to start thinking about it from the very beginning, because when you start putting things into place that do not have this inclusive design, you will need then to scrap a part of it to really be inclusive. But if you do it early, it's really not that expensive. It also implies, especially when you consider disability, testing. Testing is really the secrets to you uh, as as creators. You can get with experience a good feeling of how it's going, what kind of experience you're gonna make, but you cannot be certain of it. And the more complex the experience, the less certainty there will be. Right up until you test with other people who know nothing about your experience. It's really at that time, like you can see, okay, what I made right now, did it work? Didn't work? And that will give you the real value of, okay, what I'm trying to achieve with this whole thing when it's done is going to be actually what I wanted it to be, or did I deviate from it? Looking specifically at video games, there are more specific goals than design in general. Like very explicitly, it's about entertainment, even though like horror can be entertainment as well. But you also different audiences. As I said, like you can have casual players and hardcore players, different hardwares. When you're using a game controller, it's not the same as when you're using a smartphone or a keyboard. You don't have this. Yeah, you don't have the same ability to interact with the game. So it's something to keep in mind in the design and the accessibility. At the end, it's this approach is already about focusing on the player who will be the real person who will be experiencing your creation. And it's done through iterating. It's really there's really it's really the way games are made. You design, you have an idea what you're trying to make, you test it, and then some things will be wrong. There's always some that are, and you change them, and so you go back to the design and you test it again and again until you are satisfied enough about what you made. Because there's no such thing as a game that's done. You could, like a lot of game creators can continue for years and still be like, this part could be better and this part could be better. And it's really about thinking, okay, but when is it like good enough to, it's close enough to what I want to make to put out in the world. one of the tools to do that, to make that experience as close as possible to your target, is using oil, which is about removing friction. Like if you have things that are complicated to do, but they don't add anything meaningful, you are making your experience, you're making your game more frustrating than it needs to be. Really, you should aim for frustration only when it makes sense for your experience. If it doesn't, then there's no excuse. Make it simpler. The complexity needs to balance. As I said before, with cognitive load, if the more complex you make things, the harder it is to keep everything in mind. So you might, even though it might seem okay-ish, over the time, it might get tiring for you. So that's something really important to focus on. And streamline, meaning you will there if there are steps that are not necessary, you make sure. Well, we're using computers. You can automate things, and that's, as designers, it's really your job to make sure it gets as slick as possible. The other tool is Juice. It's really about how the every action needs to have needs to be good, needs to bring something. It won't look the same on every game, but it's really about looking at what the design is. For example, the design of a chair. Chair is just about sitting down. That's it. But this chair, you can tell it is comfortable. It is not just doing the simplest version, it's doing more. And this is like the idea with Juice. You should make it everything a bit more enjoyable, and you should also focus on when you have special moments to ramp that up even more. Now we're going to continue by looking at game production. In practice, it's going to look very different depending on if you're a small indie developer or if you are looking in AAA industry. It's really about how many people are in the team, how much time do you have. But it's really that, like I said before, it's really you have to think from the beginning about the user, and you should include, I guess I said, include for disability early and focus on the user. That will make it a better experience for everyone. Like in small teams, which is really more of my area, it's going to be really about what makes the best sense, because you do not have a ton of time. You don't necessarily have dedicated people for this. So it needs to be part of your process, and you need to make sure to spend time. Don't reinvent the wheel. There are tools to take care of some things, and use that time then so you can refine your designs and for a better overall experience. In larger teams, they will have dedicated people for UX. They will have researchers, which have way more a scientific approach to it. With actual people who come in, then they are with rigorous academic tests, like in Ubisoft, and they have because they have the budget for it. They can, if they so choose, make the whole experience more enjoyable. But it is still something that is decided at the top. you can see the difference in the last years between the more Western industries and the Japanese industry that has not yet has that focus on accessibility, and you'll see a lot of Japanese games with extremely small extremely small font sizes, and which makes even regular people like have a hard time when it shouldn't be necessary. And like that's really my focus. Like you can make a great experience, but you could also make it great for everyone. Thank you.